Good morning or good afternoon. Today we'll be watching a Quizzette video on Quizzette 711. Please make sure you write your last name, comma, first name, today's date, and circle your class color. Number 1, if you have an IXL account, these are M3 and K7 exercises. And for number 2, it's K4. Number 3 on your Quizzette this week is direct screenshots from the quiz that you guys are going to be taking maybe at the end of this week, if not at the beginning of next week. So unfortunately, you can't find the last quiz questions on IXL. So number 1, it says, which is the better buy? You did something similar to this last week. You just have to compare the price of the item and see which one is cheaper or see which one is the better buy. So for number 1, we have a 2-pack of scented candles for $1.90. So you would get $1.90 and you would divide it by 2. And you would see that 2 doesn't go into 1 evenly. So you start the decimal. Let me see. 2 goes into 19. I believe 9 times, which is 18. You have 1 left over, and you bring the 0 down. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and you're done. So this is 95 cents per candle. And then the second one is $5.58. I'm going to write that in red. So we have $5.58 divided by 6. 6 does not go into 5 evenly. 6 goes into 55 9 times, which is 54. That's going to be 1 left over. Bring down the 8. 6 goes into 18 3 times. So that's 93 cents a candle. So the one that's the better buy is the second one. So I would circle that one. Okay. So I do want the unit rate for each I guess each term. So I want the unit rate for the second term, and I do want the unit rate for the second term. So when we're grading these, I am going to be looking for the unit rates. And the unit rates is just like the cost for one candle or the cost for whatever item they're asking you. And then I'm also going to give you a check for circling the one that's the better buy. Number 1, there's a second question here. Sorry for that noise. Number 1, the second question says, select a table that shows a proportional relationship between X and Y. So you are going to have to write both ratios. So let me see. I'm going to write the first one in purple. So my ratio is 5/4. That's my first ratio. My next ratio is 10/8. And my next ratio is 15/12. 15/12. Okay, 5/4 reduces to, I guess you could say it reduces to 1 point. Oh man, I didn't want to do the math, but I'm going to have to, because I can't do that in my head. Sorry, so that's 1. 4 goes into 10 2 times, and 5. So that's 1.25. Let's look at the next one. 8 goes into 10. I think, 8/10 reduces to 5/4. So that's going to be equal to the same thing. 15/12 reduces to, let me see. 3 reduces that. So 3 goes into 15 5 times. 3 goes into 12 4 times. Actually, they all equal the same decimal or the same improper fraction. So this one is proportional. This one is proportional. Now let's look at the next one. The next one could be proportional as well. I'm going to write that one in green. So we have 3/2, which is going to be equal to 1.5. 9/6, that reduces to 3/2 as well, which is 1.5. And then the next one is 18/12, which reduces to no, I'm sorry. I wrote the wrong one up there. Oops. What number goes into both of those? 6 goes into both of those. 6 goes into 18 3 times, and 6 goes into 12 twice. And lo and behold, that one is also proportional. So they are both proportional. So I would circle both, or I'd select both. If I'm on IXL, I would click on both of those, and then I'd click go or check, and that's the right solution. So they're both proportional. Okay, so if you get the, like, let's say the first term, 3/2 is proportional, and then 9/6 is proportional, but then you get a different number for the last one, that means that that table is not proportional. So you're just trying to see if it's proportional or not. Number 3. Okay, so number 2, it says, there is a proportional relationship between the number of plates Lila makes, X, and the amount of clay she uses in pounds, Y. So there's a directly proportional relationship between the amount of plates and the amount of pounds that she uses to make those plates. So if you look here, if we're looking at 2 plates, how many pounds does she use for 2 plates? We could go up on the graph and see that it's somewhere around here. It's probably 8. I think it is exactly on 8. And then we could look at 1 and see how many plates she makes, and that's 4. So remember, so this is 1, 4, and that represents 1 plate. Sorry, 1 plate takes 4 pounds. That's a heavy plate. And then 2 plates is 8 pounds. So if I was writing this, it'd be 8 over 2, which is equal to 4 over 1, or just 4 pounds per plate. And then let's see if they match. This one is 4 over 1, which is just 4 pounds per plate. This is how you know if a graph is proportional. If you could plot a point and then make a ratio out of the point and see that their slopes are also the same, or their unit rates or their constant proportionality is the same. And in this case, we notice that it's the same for both. And the question says, what is a constant proportionality? Write your answer as a whole number. So how many pounds per plate do you use? You use, obviously, 4 pounds per plate. Now, if you were going to write an equation, you can do the extra mile and write the equation. Y equals 4x. And in this case, the x would represent the plates, and the y would represent the pounds. And the ratio would be y over x, which is pounds to plates. So I don't want you to do this every single day. I just wanted you to understand what you're doing. All I really care about is that you can plot the points and that you can tell me what the constant proportionality is and that you write an equation. So what I care about are the points, the answer, and the equation. Okay? Number 3 is different each day because, again, I told you that they're sample quiz questions. I put the harder question, in my opinion, for number 3 on Monday. So if I'm going to write my ratios, I always write it y to x. Okay, in this case, it would be hours per mile, or for distance. It says complete the table for an object that goes 3/4 of miles in 6 minutes. Okay, so the way I'd write this ratio is I would look to see where my units are and which one represents x and which one represents y. In this scenario, we have 34 miles, and miles represents the y. And then in 6 minutes, 6 minutes represents the x. So we have 6 over 1. We can just put a 1 under that. And let's write our first ratio. So we have 6 over 1 divided by 3/4. And this is going to tell us the time it takes us to run 1 entire mile, because miles is on the bottom, and we're trying to figure out how many miles not how many miles, but how much time it takes us to run 1 mile. So let's see. 6 times 4 is 24. And then 1 times 3 is 3. 3 goes into 24 8 times, so it takes us 8 minutes to run 1 mile. Okay, now they give us the first ratio in the box. It says in 3/4 of a mile, I went 1/10 of an hour. And 1/10 of an hour is indeed 6 minutes. All right, so the next one is the distance is asking you how much time will it take you to go 1.5 miles? How much time will it take? So you can notice that 3/4, if you were to double 3/4, so if you were to multiply 3/4 by 2, it would get you 1.5. So if you could multiply 3/4 by 2, you can also do that to your x terms, and it'll get you the number to put in this blank. So let's go ahead and try that. 3/4 times 2 is 6/4. And if you reduce 6/4, that's 3 halves. And 3/2 written as a mixed number is 1.5. So that actually checks out. So now let's multiply 1/10 by 2, and that's going to be 2/10. If you reduce that, that's 1/5. Okay, now let's try to see if there could be a pattern between the first two terms of your chart to get you that third quantity, which is 2 1/4. Now, let's look at what the improper fraction is of 2 1/4. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So this would be 9/4. Okay. Now, the first term is already in terms of fourths. And this one, before we reduced it, the second one was in terms of fourths, which was 6/4. So let's see. Let's go ahead and add 3/4 plus 6/4. That gets you 9/4, which is what we want. So if we add the first two quantities, it gets us our third quantity. So if we do that to the top term, we can do that to the bottom. And we have 1/10 plus, instead of 1/5, I'm going to do 2/10. So 1/10 plus 2/10 is 3/10. And that is our time for the blank on the last blank. So what this chart is telling you is in 3/4 of a mile, you go 1/10 of an hour. And in 1.5 miles, you go 1/5 of an hour. 1/5 of an hour is, let's see, if you broke up 60 minutes into fifths, it would be 60 divided by 5, which is 12 minutes. And that makes sense. Look, let's double 6 minutes. If we double 6 minutes, we get 12 minutes. And the last term, if we add 6 minutes plus 12 minutes, that's 18 minutes. So in 2 1/4 of a mile, that would take you 18 minutes, right? For an object going, I'm sorry, it's not us running. It's an object that travels at 3/4 of a mile in 6 minutes, and then we just found it. We broke it down. So this is probably one of it is the most difficult question that was on the most difficult version of your quiz. I do not see this on the quiz that you guys should be taking, so don't feel like you have to memorize this. But if you understand what I'm doing, like if you understand that you could double your first term to get your second term, and you can add those two to get your third term, then that's the pattern that you should be familiar with. And then if it ever asks you in terms of time, you want to break it up into like a real scenario. So like I did right there, I told you that's 6 minutes, the next one's 12 minutes, the next one's 18 minutes. Okay, good luck on this Quizzette.